Alright, chat. W Stuggy. What's up, Carson? Alright. So. We're gonna be doing some fun stuff today, which includes learning about the kidneys. Woo! 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 Okay, hold up. Let me flip this around for you guys. There you go. We're also, I think we'll do some general review here as well. Nephrons. Alright. Look at those beautiful notes right there. We're going to go back. Nephrons. I just want to look over how it reabsorbs nutrients and stuff. If you didn't know, nephrons are those, there's at least 1 million of them in your kidneys, and what they do is they pretty much just filter out urea and water. So that's what you pee out pretty much. That's exactly what pee is. And then, well, they get all the good stuff back. Because they need to pee out what you don't need, right? We need to pee out what we don't need. How does our body do that? They have to specifically, somebody shouts Bowman's capsule in chat. Yes, that is indeed a word within this thing. That's what holds the glomerulus. I can actually show you. That is part of the nephron. Here is the glomerulus. And what you're describing here, this is the Bowman's capsule. So I'm glad you said that in chat. You are correct. Good. Well, you are correct for saying a word that is within this unit. So, congratulations. W in chat. Alright. But yeah, that's part of the cortex of the kidney. Anyways, so what exactly happens? We're going to go into a little bit of function. The first way that it gets what we need back into our blood and what we don't need out of our blood, the first one is pressure filtration. I'm assuming this is where the majority of it happens. So this in the glomerulus, this is a bunch of capillaries. They're semi-permeable membranes. So what does it do exactly? What does it do? Okay, my man's just saying the answers in chat. My man's definitely taking bio as well. What does this do? Well. Like a capillary, like any other part of your body, like, you know, capillaries, there's something called osmotic pressure. I don't think, is it also osmotic pressure in this? You're saying selective reabsorption, but is it actually selective reabsorption? No, hold up, that's the second point. That's the second point. Hold on. You're skipping ahead of us, bro Chacho. Well, that is one of the things that one of the ways the nephron gets stuff out. But the first one at the glomerulus is pressure filtration. So. It is blood pressure. It isn't osmotic pressure, but it's blood pressure. So that's actually different than a regular capillary. So osmotic pressure, or not osmotic pressure, blood pressure, actually forces out the pretty much everything, it seems. Water, nutrients, waste. Oh. Drywall. Anyways, water, nutrients, waste out of the glomerulus. And that's when it goes into the Bowman's capsule. This is Bowman's capsule. So you got that all right. So now it's called filtrate. So once it's filtered into the Bowman's capsule, it's called filtrate. Here's the thing. The large organic molecules, so like literal blood cells, red blood cells, and I guess every other type of blood cell, they don't get filtered out. So they aren't part of this new filtrate. It's basically just, yeah, so what it is, it's just your blood plasma. because it just took out the big ol' blood proteins and stuff. It just left that behind. Oh yeah, no, hold up. And no, yeah, I left blood proteins as well. So, blood cells and blood proteins. Okay. Whenever I see TF2, I think thinking face 2. I don't know why. So used to TS2. Okay. Sorry. Deamination. So this happens in the liver. Deamination of amino acids, of course, in the liver. That produces ammonia and is then converted to urea. Yeah, you probably just wouldn't want ammonia in there, so no wonder it's converted to urea. Which is one of the main things in one of the main things in your pee, pretty much. One of the big old things. So it's important, because if blood pressure is too low, filtration won't happen. So yes, it is based off of blood pressure, not osmotic pressure. So there's a hormone called renin. This is specialized. Look, this is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Look. Let's say your blood pressure's too low. Nothing is pushing up on these walls enough. So nothing will get through. The things inside won't want to go through. So what does your body do? Because the blood's still flowing this direction. Your blood actually, and now it's making like a bubble. Now there's a lot of pressure pushing on here, because now your blood has to squeeze through here. So that's what renin does. It squeezes it down. So now there's a lot of pressure pushing on these walls. So these can easily go through the semi-permeable membrane. But those are massive, so clearly those would be like red blood cells or something, so those wouldn't go through. But you can dream. Oopsies. So now we're actually going to go into selective reabsorption. Thank you for the information. You're welcome. If you're not taking bio, you get to be ahead of the game. You were smarter than somebody who didn't click on this stream. So congratulations, everybody. So this happens at the proximal convoluted tubule, which we can just call the PCT. So pretty much, the glomerulus, remember this earlier? We're going to draw it smaller. And then we got the Bowman's capsule. And then this is where it goes to, this is the proximal convoluted tubule. We're going to keep going. This is the loop of Henle. We're going to get to the distal convoluted tubule, which we can call DCT. And then it goes down to the collecting duct. That is a terrible nephron. Wow. Draw our afferent and efferent arterioles here. Arterioles. Okay, so what happens at, well, yes, this is the proximal convoluted tubule. What happens here? Selective reabsorption. What happens at the proximal convoluted tubule? Selective reabsorption. Oh, yeah. Well, mainly. So, important nutrients we need in our blood, like, glucose, literal glucose, that hasn't been filtered out yet, only got blood plasma and red blood cells, or blood proteins. Blood proteins, that includes, I guess that includes red blood cell. So, glucose, and, our amino acids, vitamins, minerals, all that stuff, and salts. Those are reabsorbed. We still need some water, so that'll be reabsorbed a little bit. Our blood isn't entirely dry. We need a solution to move through stuff. That's why I use water. They're reabsorbed into the, what is that? perpetubular capillary network. What the nuts? That, okay, that. That is reabsorbed into the... All the things I said were reabsorbed into the perpetubular capillary network. Got it. Which requires ATP. That means it is active transport, does it not? Yeah, I think so. So this does a little bit of negative feedback. This maintains homeostasis a little bit. Well, of course it does. But specifically here, the amount of bicarbonate ions that are reabsorbed depends on the pH of the blood. So this does a little bit of balancing here. So that's interesting. I don't think it's quite a negative feedback cycle, but I think it just directly takes it out if there's too much. I don't think it does anything if there's too little. Just prays that there will be more bicarbonate ions in your blood. So then there's water reabsorption. Like right here. Water reabsorption. What is water reabsorption? Well, good question, because I don't know. Just kidding. Well, I kind of don't know. This happens at the ascending loop of Henle. So this happens right here. And what does it do? I think it's osmosis. Right. So yeah, it actively pumps Na out of the nephron. And, well, it actively pumps sodium into the nephron and potassium... No, sodium out of the nephron, potassium into the nephron. So then... Oh, and then what? Chlorine follows the sodium into the renal medulla. I'm not even paying attention at this point. Making the capillaries hypertonic to the nephron. What did all of that mean? So there's an electrical concentration gradient. And yeah, no, I doubt I'm gonna have to know something that specific, so I'm just gonna skip it. Anyways, tubular excretion. Excretion, not execretion. Excrete. So this is okay. So this is once we get to the last little loopy thing in the nephron. So pretty much, excess molecules like hydrogen ions, histamine, penicillin, creatine, all that stuff, are secreted into it from the blood. Okay. Which also helps maintain homeostasis. Wait. Secreted into the... Okay. So pretty much it's your blood just dropping off a bunch of stuff we have too much of just to maintain homeostasis. Okay. And that's what also helps maintain the pH with the, negative feedback. So it does negative feedback with pH of your blood. So if pH is too low, it just drops a bunch of hydrogen ions in there. Okay. I believe you. Wait a minute. Okay. Okay, and then the final thing is, so yeah, this is basically just maintain homeostasis. We have the same mouse. Yeah, it's a very common mouse. Very, very common mouse. It's like probably the most sold mouse ever for something or something. And then there's finally the fifth one, which is excretion. What is excretion, you may ask? Oh, well, excretion is pretty much just, we're done. We're done with the nephron. It goes to the, I'm assuming, to the collecting duct? Yeah. Yeah, it goes to the collecting duct and transported to the renal pelvis. The renal pelvis. The renal pelvis. Remember all of that? Don't worry, I don't either. The first one. And I already forgot the first one. I already forgot the first one. Are we for real right now? Not selective reabsorption. The first one, pressure filtration. That's what I think it is. Pressure, so, okay, we gotta remember here. Pressure filtration. What is this? This is this is at the glomerulus, where it just takes out pretty much your blood plasma, but without the blood proteins. That's what it does. Then we go to selective reabsorption. This is where it takes specific molecules, such as salts, vitamins, minerals, all that stuff, and brings that back to the blood. Also does stuff with bicarbonate ions, I think, just to maintain pH and stuff. Then it goes to the ascending loop of Henle, where it does, I think, water reabsorption. That's where, yeah, it just reabsorbs water, bro. There's some other process that they mention with potassium and sodium and chlorine, but I'm not going to care about that. Then we go to, the fourth one, the one that balances pH and maintains homeostasis a little bit. I forgot the name of it, though. Yeah, I entirely forgot the name of that thing. What was it? Tubular excretion. Yeah, there you go. Tubular excretion. There you go. And then, no, that's not the last one or the final one. No, and then the last one is excretion. And that's where it just sends whatever's left over in the collecting duct to the renal pelvis. Alright, that's like a 85% equivalent, so that wasn't great, but we'll go over it again. Structures. I feel like I understand this. Yeah, I get this. Let's skip that. Let's go over hormones. Yay! So, antidiuretic hormone. I think that's how you say it. Antidiuretic hormone. So this is what... Yeah, so this is part of negative feedback, where it controls the reabsorption. How do you spell that? Diuretic hormone. Or ADH. You can also just call it ADH. So, this. So this is what controls the permeability of the DCT and the collecting duct. Okay. Yeah, so this, because that's the area where it, well, not the only area, because, you know, the ascending loop of Henle also does water reabsorption, but no. Yes. No. Yes. Yeah, water reabsorption. That happens in the ascending loop of Henle. Anyways, that stuff occurs. But for some reason, this only focuses the DCT and the collecting duct. I don't know why those specifically, but why do I say it like that? Those specifically, but whatever. So, So if there's a decreased amount of urine, the concentration is going to be a lot higher. Well, if there's a decreased amount of water, I'm going to say, the urine concentration is going to be a lot higher. So if there's more water, then it's going to be less concentrated. That's why when you drink a lot of water, your pee basically has nothing in it. Well, it looks like it has nothing in it. Well, a lot of the time it doesn't have a lot in it. So if there's not a lot of water taken in, the hypothalamus is going to release a hormone. Oh yeah, so yeah, your hypothalamus doesn't really release it, but it tells the pituitary gland to release it. Which it just sends over the hormone, which tells the nephrons, hey, stop, or please, or don't, or wait, what am I saying? Stop throwing away all our water. Not very good. Not very good at all. Something very bad is alcohol, because it has a negative effect. Damn. Because it has a negative effect on this hormone, because it sends false messages pretty much to the hypothalamus. So it just, if you're thirsty and you have too much alcohol, then pretty much it will inhibit. Yeah, okay. So it'll inhibit this hormone, stopping the hypothalamus from releasing it. Therefore, it will just stay there. Or sorry, what am I saying? What do you mean stay there? Then it won't tell the nephrons to hold on to the water. So keep getting rid of water, which is not good. You will become very high dehydrated. Aldosterone. This regulates the sodium-potassium. So, too much sodium. Hold on. Let's say your sodium is too low. Aldosterone will cause, so it'll just say, hey, we need more sodium. Let's hold on to it. At the ascending loop of Henle part. Yeah, okay. And if sodium concentration is too high, then we release... No, then the release of aldosterone is inhibited. So then it'll stop sodium from doing that. Wait. Yeah, it's close enough. You know what? I kind of understand it. And what a nice. We're actually gonna jump back a little bit in this unit. Yes, we will jump back in this unit. So, here's something interesting. Your body doesn't have one way of getting rid of water. Well, chat, think about it. How many different ways of getting rid of water does our body have? Most people are going to get peeing and sweating, which is pretty good. Most people might only get peeing. A lot of people will get sweating, also known as perspiration, which is pretty solid. But here's the thing. There is actually 6 Poo is included. What? Poo is included. What? And then breathing, of course, there's a thing that happens in our breath where pretty much, what happened again? There was some sort of neutralization reaction that occurred, where CO2 and H2O were produced, which just leave our body, pretty much. That happens somewhere. And then there's tears. That counts. I mean, if you guys thought a little longer, you probably would have thought of that. Then there's expectorating. What? Coughing or spitting out. Oh, okay. Great. Yeah. Not a lot I can say about that one. Urinary system. What do we have? Our kidneys, ureters, bladder, urethra. Yepers. We know that. Yeah, we got it. Let's now go back. Let's go to, neurons and stuff. So, yeah, let's go into neurons. What about neurons? Well, neurons, they do be gotten. Yeah, this is what a neuron looks like. So there's, well, I could talk about, I'm not gonna talk about that right now. I mean, what do they got? I mean, they have their cell body here. They have dendrites. That's where they receive nerve impulses. They have their axon. This is this long thing it just goes across there to transport stuff to other parts of the body. We got our axons. That's what I just said. Those are these. The myelin sheath is pretty much the fat that's around these little things. Nodes of Ranvier. These are the spaces in between the myelin sheath. Motor end plates are... What are these again? Oh, right. Those are just like in a sensory neuron, what connects it to the muscle. Wait. No, hold on. It's not receiving, but it's in a motor neuron, not a sensory neuron. It gets it. All right. Ganglia, which are just a little, oh, it's like a collection of these cell bodies. Huh. What does that look like? I do not know. Sensory neuron. So these are very long. They are connected. Their dendrites, I'm assuming, are connected in the what? Dendrites are connected. Don't forget the hemoglobin eats the yeah, I did not learn that. But we're gonna go back to hemoglobin a little later, actually. So these dendrites, what do they do, you may ask? Well, these dendrites, they are within the CNS, and their axons spread out of the CNS to the muscle receptors, the receptors in your muscles. And then when they get an impulse, it goes back up. It's only one way, like it only gets an impulse from whatever, our skin cells, and then it goes back. And then it says, hey, something happened. And then the CNS, where the interneurons are that, you know, deal with the stuff, that sends a message back out through the motor neurons and says, here's what you should, well, no, pretty much, you know, something touches our skin. The receptors in our skin connected to the sensory neurons, like, oh, shoot. And then it goes back to the CNS, which is a central nervous system, where all the interneurons are. They process whatever the nuts is happening, which is a spinal cord, by the way, or the brain. The brain's also included if it's that important. Okay, it does not depend on importance, depends on what's happening. But the interneurons get that, and I'm studying. Hello. Goodbye. Close both. Bro walked through both doors and made sure both of them stayed open. Holy nuts, bro. Okay, I'm back. So pretty much, dendrites. It does that. What am I saying again? The dendrites get to the... Okay. Are those... No, those are synaptic endings. No, they're not dendrites because they only transport messages. So they transport messages to the dendrites of the interneurons, and then the interneurons are like, okay, what do we do with this? And then once it has an answer, it just sends it to the motor neurons, and then they go all the way back and says, hey, skin, this is what you should do about it. There you go. With a long pause in between my explanation, but it's fine. And then there's a nerve, which is just a bunch of these neurons. They travel together because they're like 5,000 atoms thick. They're going to break if they are on their own. And then, what are these little bulges? This is just a Schwann cell, which is myelinated. That's the process where pretty much I think we're going to talk about this the next unit. Okay, let's go to the next unit so we can read about this. Yes, in action potentials. So pretty much what happens is there's depolarization and repolarization. Usually you're sitting at negative 70 millivolts. That's the charge of the inside of our neuron. So it's pretty there's a pretty big polaric difference between the inside of the neuron and the outside. So when it actually, does its thing, an action potential, it sends an impulse. When the nerve sends an impulse, it reaches up to here, up to negative 55 millivolts, and it's like, okay, now we're gonna launch ourselves. And then they go wee. Can you zoom in on the notes? Let's see if I can. Wah. There you go. So once it reaches this negative 55 thing, you can see these two little lines. This means like it tried to reach, but it didn't. It tried to reach, but didn't. But once it reaches negative 55, it's like, okay, now it's happening. So then it launches up to here. This is called depolarization. So what happens throughout the thing is that because it's electronegative in the inside, it's negative 70 millivolts. This flips because there's like little proteins that let potassium ions hold on. It lets sodium ions in. In depolarization, it lets sodium ions in, which makes it slightly more positive because Na+, they're plus. So then, it lets these pluses in. So this is more positive now. And then there is, I think, repolarization. Yes, repolarization. This is where it lets potassium ions out. So we need to make this more positive. What do? We bring more positives into here. And now what? We take the other type of positive and we bring it out so it moves forward. Yay! So here's a resting potential. Well, this is the resting potential, right? Is that true? Is that right? Yes, resting. This is the resting potential once at negative 70 millivolts. And then once it goes to here, depolarization, repolarization. There's a little thing here. I don't think it explains that. It's a refractory period. Okay. It's called a refractory period. And then it just goes back to the normal resting potential. So this little area is just called the action potential. And then this is called the refractory period. And then resting potential. Okay, no, that same thing. This happens in around 5 milliseconds. So 1/200th of a second, or I mean 1 frame of a, it's like a 240 hertz frame perfect. Well, 200 hertz frame perfect. Where, yeah, this happens in 5 milliseconds. Very cool. That. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Neurotransmitters. So these are those little things that go across the synaptic gap to send those things across. Do we get into this? Hold up. What the nuts? Okay. Moving on. So the neurotransmitters, they bind to these receptor sites. Sorry, I said these as if I just explained what they are, but I entirely neglected that explanation. Okay. Okay, where do we start? Okay, this, that. Okay. I'm too lazy to explain that, but I kind of get it. Actually, let's just do it anyways. So, we're gonna get real close here. You see this little thing here? These little endings. Okay, do I have an exact? No, I don't think I. No, I did. Synaptic gaps, which connect to somebody else's dendrites. So you could just imagine this as somebody else's dendrite just connecting to this. So here's what happens. Let's draw it up close here. So this is actually on each end of those little sticks. This is a synapse. Now, what goes on here is a bunch of vesicles containing neurotransmitters, which are the things that go across here. And they're in little vesicles, little bubbles, pretty much, in the synapse. And what happens is, oh, there's also mitochondria here. Hey, there's little mitochondria, they do da ba ding donga dings here. They do da da bing donga dings here. That's so good. So the little vesicles take these, you see those little dots? Those are neurotransmitters. What happens is calcium. Okay, so specifically at the end of the axon, where we're talking about the sodium and potassium here, not only does sodium go back in to the into the axon during, I think during the resting potential. I think that's when the sodium. No, wait. No. So during depolarization, actually, once I think about it. So depolarization comes in. Yes, it does that. Depolarization makes sodium come in, but at the end of the axon, also calcium comes in. And once the calcium, why does calcium come in at the end of the axon? Well, because it's close to the synapse. It decides to move over, and it binds to the proteins that pull the little vesicles, and it forces them. Wait, hold up. It forces these little bubbles to attach to this gap and release their little neurotransmitters, which go across a little gap, and they are received by the other end, which are the dendrites. That's how it carries their messages across. There's actually a tiny little gap here. I forgot how many, you know, how close they actually are, but it's very small, very very small. Hold up. So here's the thing. If there's enough neurotransmitters that get across, this means there's a guarantee that it will fully nerve impulse. That makes sense. Is a guarantee that it'll fire an action potential or a nerve impulse. If it doesn't get any, there's a 0% chance that'll happen. So it's really just all or nothing. Yeah. Increased stimulation of a neuron increases frequency of nerve impulse. Nice. Got it. Nice. Randy and dandy. So, reflexes. Reflexes, for what I remember, reflexes are just automatic. You do not, like, your interneurons relay it really fast, or does it go straight from the sensory to the... Wait a minute. They don't involve, decision making, of course. Yeah, so the sensory neurons, instead of going to the interneurons and bringing it to the motor neurons, it goes from the sensory neurons straight to the motor neurons. You don't have to... So basically what that means is you don't even think about it. That's what a reflex is. It goes straight. Like, we're being damaged. We rush it. We rush the whole process. We go straight to motor neurons. Motor neurons do something without thinking about it. We have that, like, straight up. So that's why your reaction time may be like 200 milliseconds, but your reflexes are like 50. You don't have to think about it. It is pretty much immediate. What else? What else? Sorry about the brain. The brain. So there's the spinal cord. I'm too lazy to go through every single vertebrae. But they exist, just know that. What's happening? Central. What am I doing again? Spinal cord. Spinal cord. Okay. So, let's talk about the spinal cord. What is the spinal cord? GG and Crazy 2. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Oh yeah, dorsal and ventral. So, in the spinal cord, a diagram of the spinal cord just flashed in my mind. Perfect. In the spinal cord, you have your dorsal and ventral. Okay, you can't really see two different lines. It's one line, but whatever. Your dorsal, so that's the back part of your spinal cord, and it relays the information to your brain. And then the ventral part just sends whatever happened in your brain back out. So, okay, and here's the interesting part. There are two different tracks. They're parallel bundles, pretty much. And this is in the dorsal, I'm assuming. These swap over. And, like, these come from, whatever, the left side of your body, the right side of your body. And these swap over in the spine, meaning that the left part of your brain actually controls the right side. And vice versa. That's crazy. So then, let's talk about the brain stem. Pretty much, in the brain, you got our brain here. We got our nice little brain here. We got a little stem. It looks like because of the spike, it kind of looks like the brain in Plants vs. Zombies. So pretty much, the brain stem. This is the brain stem. This is the brain stem. So what does the brain stem do? Well, it's got the medulla oblongata. Very cool. We talk about that a lot, actually, because it does a lot in these thingies. Oh yeah, because I remember it talked a lot about heart rate and blood pressure, breathing too. It does all of that. And then there's the cerebellum. The cerebellum. What does the cerebellum do, you may ask? Well, the cerebellum, this is pretty much... Hold on, is this right here? Yeah, this is like, there's a little like thing behind the brain here, which is this thing. This is the cerebellum. So, what it does is, it controls muscle stuff. Yes, so it controls basically our muscles. So like, instead of using our prefrontal cortex to think like, okay, what I'm going to do is I am going to make this go forward, then I'm going to make this go forward, and then I'm going to use this thing to turn like this, and then I'm going to use my shoulder to go back, and then I'm going to use this to open, and then grab my pencil. Instead of thinking like that, our cerebellum does that process for us. So without thinking, we can just do whatever the nuts we want as fast as we think of it, pretty much. I'm assuming that also it holds the sensation, or it explains the sensation of proprioception. Proprioception. It doesn't say that, but that's my guess. Anyways, hypothalamus. Yay. So this thing, like we mentioned earlier, it does a lot with glands. So it has a lot to do with the endocrine system, with releasing hormones, pretty much, because glands release hormones. So, yeah, it does a lot of basic stuff. It controls, yes, it controls the pituitary gland, a little like ball that comes out in the front here. It controls the pituitary gland, as the hypothalamus is right here, so it's like right next to it. So pretty much, it just deals with really basic stuff. So hunger, thirst, sleep, all that stuff. And the important part is maintaining homeostasis, because hormones have a lot to do with maintaining homeostasis. And considering it controls what the endocrine system does specifically, it deals with it pretty well. Then there's the thalamus, which is a little thing above the hypothalamus. What does it do? Okay, so the hypothalamus is right above, actually, and what it does is it takes whatever information we got, and it says, okay, this should go to you, or this should go to you, this should go to you. It tells it where it should go, pretty much. Where the information should go. You're playing chess, it's going to tell whatever's happening to go to the prefrontal cortex. It's not the prefrontal, this is. Or the frontal lobe, the thing that got bit off in the bite of 87. What the nuts? Okay, whatever. And whatever part of the brain it is. V1, V2, V3, V4. Whatever. Who cares? Whatever part of the cerebrum specifically. I think. Yeah, specifically the cerebrum. It also prevents sensory overload. So you don't want to be thinking too much, yo. So, V4 is right here. Oh, this is V3. V3 is out here. V3. Such a tiny diagram. I don't know why I chose this. The frontal lobe. This should be V3. Or V1. V1. It is the frontal lobe. What am I doing? Then the parietal, parietal.
Parietal.
Parietal?
Parietal.
Parietal. Okay. Then there is the parietal lobe. I wonder what that does. Temperature, touch, and pain. Okay. Then there's the frontal lobe. That's where conscious thought and all the, like, calculating happens. Temporal lobe, and specifically with the frontal lobe, that's what we have a lot of. We have a lot of frontal lobe, which kind of makes sense. That's why we're so much smarter than every other animal. The temporal lobe. What is the temporal lobe? Good question. I have no idea. Oh, it's hearing and smelling. Okay, nice. Then the occipital lobe, I think it is, which is just vision. Okay. Damn, a whole thing for just vision. That's crazy. Well, that makes sense. I remember with another psychology thing, it talked about the V4 area. Corpus callosum. I don't want to learn about that. The corpus callosum holds the hemispheres together. And it conducts an impulse from one side to the other. Okay, that's cool. It makes a lot of sense, actually, because the occipital lobe is nowhere near the frontal lobe, because those are the only two lobes that aren't touching, and I can just think about it myself. It makes sense that they're so far apart, because they have no reason to talk to each other. They genuinely don't, and that's why those parts of the brain are very far away from each other. Because, like, why would you need to calculate something that deals with vision? You know what I mean? So that's that. Are we gonna go into the PNS? sounded like I just said something, but I said PNS, the peripheral nervous system. So, what am I saying? What does it do? The somatic, what am I saying? Somatic is pretty much, we can control it, I guess. Yeah, so muscles, joints, and skin, we can control it. Well, muscles specifically. And then autonomic. I somehow rolled my R's when I said that. Autonomic. This controls, like, stuff we don't need to think about. Or stuff that we can't think about. So heartbeat, we cannot tell our beat to stop hearting. Sorry, we cannot tell our heart to stop beating. We cannot, we can't do that. All right. Something else we can't tell to speed up or stop. But something we don't have to control that happens automatically without thinking about it. Which is also autonomic, is breathing or blinking. We breathe, we don't have to think about it, and we blink. We also don't have to think about that. But we can if we wanted to. We can blink faster if we wanted to. We can breathe faster if we wanted to. But don't breathe too fast because you might faint. So please don't do that. Don't breathe too little because you'll also faint, okay? What am I saying? Adrenal gland. Way. So, So, let's talk about when you get nervous. Like, let's say you're playing Geometry Dash. You're at 90%. Pretty much, noradrenaline, the release of noradrenaline causes adrenaline to release. So now, or epinephrine, norepinephrine or epinephrine, whatever. You can just call it epinephrine or adrenaline with the nor part behind both if you want. And what it does is, so adrenaline is released. Now, why do we get nervous? Why do we get nervous? All right? Something's important. So, we want to make sure we're as active as possible. So that's what adrenaline does. That's why when we're playing GD, we're at 90%. Something is important. Therefore, we need to focus. Your brain says we need to focus, even though getting nervous usually can mess us up sometimes. So pretty much, this is why our heart rate goes up when we're playing Geometry Dash, is because our body is making our heart go faster in order to get more blood to the rest of our body. We want more blood in our body so our senses are better, so we can beat the Geometry Dash level. That's exactly what happens. Our adrenal glands are like, oh shoot, or our hypothalamus, it's like, oh shoot, and then noradrenaline, and adrenaline, and then it tells us to lock in, pretty much. So we're gonna pump blood really hard. Let's make sure you get enough. Oh, air passageways. So the air passageways are actually widened with each breath, and this is so we can get more stuff. So we can exchange faster. We can get more oxygen. Some muscles might tense up as well, apparently. Just preparing you. You also gasp. That's a thing. Some things happen in your eye as well. Most people only pay attention to your heartbeat. But, because, like, that's what happens. But when you're far in GD, the iris of your eye contracts. So it widens your pupil, so you get more, you basically get more light going into your eye. So you see more when you're nervous. Although for me, I feel like I'm paying attention to too much, which might actually be explained by this, but I feel like once I'm far in GD, I can't do the normal thing and just like look here, then look here. This is where I usually look here and start clicking now. I feel like I have less track of that. It's a little harder to pay attention to the one thing. I don't know why. Well, no, that's probably explained if I were to apply this knowledge to it, but whatever. Yeah, increased blood flow. And digestive activity is a thing, which doesn't really affect GD too much. Then the hypothalamus and the hypothalamic control of the pituitary. Zibbity boo. So pretty much, there's the anterior pituitary and there's the posterior pituitary. I don't know why I thought it was going to be exterior, but it's posterior. Whatever. There's two little lobes. The anterior pituitary deals with the most hormones, which, oh, okay. So when it's the anterior pituitary, it just tells the pituitary gland to just release them. But when it's in the posterior pituitary, the hypothalamus made them, and it's telling the posterior pituitary to bring it through and do the thing. Yeah, that. So we went over a lot of good stuff today. I'm gonna go over, what do I feel like I'm not good at? What do I feel like I'm not good at? I feel like I understand it pretty well. Gas exchange. So let's say high concentration. Alright, let's talk about gas exchange a little bit. This is what happens in your red blood cells. Let's go back actually to our red blood cell thingy. We're gonna play Minecraft soon, by the way. I'm gonna do it in like 19 minutes. Here we are back to gas exchange. So pretty much, gas exchange is the thing that happens in your alveoli, in your lungs, pretty much. So, for a quick 30 seconds TLDR, in your lungs, oxygen goes in. We need this. Carbon dioxide goes out. This is from using oxygen earlier, but we don't need it anymore. And we breathe that out. We have our oxygen, and we're chilling. We continue cellular respiration, all that shite. So let's say well, and it actually goes by it seems like it goes by oh, just diffusion. What type of transport was that? I forgot. Whatever. Non-active. Non-active, okay? So pretty much it does, I don't think it uses ATP at all, actually. So there's a lot of oxygen in our alveoli. This is an alveolus in our lungs. So it's like, oh shoot, we gotta get rid. Well, no, physics says, oh shoot, there's so much here and none here. Let's just put it over here. So it diffuses into here. It can also diffuse into here, but the majority of it is lands here. And then also earlier on the other side, this CO2 from after cellular respiration, one inside of our cells, this just goes straight, into our blood plasma. It doesn't go onto a red blood cell, just our blood plasma. So it just, quickly diffuses into here. Here are the confusing ones where it is always related to hemoglobin. So, now let's talk about hydrogen ions, hydrogen, because that confused me. So hydrogen, to maintain pH, I'm assuming, they're picked up by bicarbonate ions. So so the hydrogen picked up by by bicarbonate ions. So it turns into carbonic acid. And then this happens really fast because this is really unstable. This is a really high pH, or really low pH. Low pH because it's an acid. Carbonic acid. Come on, SquishyMan. And then so quickly goes into H2 plus CO2. H2O plus CO2. And that is why when we breathe out, it isn't just air. It's a little bit of water. It's a little bit moist. So when you're in the car, you breathe a lot. That's why the inside has the water up on the things. Because it is H2O from breathing. Anyways. Let's talk about hemoglobin activities. Let's do the reduced hemoglobin one. So pretty much, oh, right. But yeah, hemoglobin is really essential. Very essential. Hold up. Okay, so oxygen plus a reduced hemoglobin. So a hemoglobin that can pick up something that, they pick up. So then it releases, because reduced hemoglobin has a hydrogen on it, it releases the hydrogen, and now we have our oxyhemoglobin. So now that we have our oxyhemoglobin, which will later go on to drop it off at cells for cellular respiration, we have an H left over. This is a hydrogen, and that's where it goes to this process, where it does the carbonic anhydrase. So, here's the thing. It is very, our blood cells are actually really good at picking up oxygen and picking up carbon dioxide, because only 9% of carbon dioxide doesn't land on the red blood cell, which isn't bad, because then it can actually very easily diffuse. If it stays in our blood plasma, it can very easily diffuse back into the alveolus. Very easy. 27% of it is where it makes our favorite 8-syllable word, carbaminohemoglobin, which is a little over a quarter. Nice. So 27% of it forms carbaminohemoglobin, where it just goes to the place and it drops. And the rest, 64%. Oh, wait, hold on. What? Hold on. Carbonic acid process happens twice, I think. Or the carbonic anhydrase happens twice. So I think with oxygen and with carbon dioxide it happens. Am I correct here? So carbon dioxide. Oh, this is kind of like the inverse. I see. So pretty much carbon dioxide reacts with water, which turns it into carbonic acid, which is the bad thing, which carbonic anhydrase happens, so it's back into a bicarbonate ion. And hydrogen ions. That's the thing. And hydrogen ions. So now, once carbonic anhydrase does its thing, later on, once it's back, this is where this process happens. So hydrogen combines back with the bicarbonate ions, where it makes carbonic acid, and then carbonic anhydrase does its thing, and now it's CO2 and H2O. So the pH so homeostasis is never broken. pH does not spiral out of control. That is impressive. Then there is hydrogen that does the thing with reduced hemoglobin. We're pretty much, hydrogen connects to the, it reacts with, not connects. So it reacts with, not connects. So pretty much hydrogen reacts with the oxyhemoglobin. So then it just makes reduced hemoglobin because it released that oxygen. Now we have our oxygen, our cells use that for whatever. And then oxygen diffuses into tissue of body. Yes. Via, pressure thingy. Now, what? I feel like I get it. I gotta keep going. Breathing. We have 4 types of respirations. 4 types of breathing, pretty much. Breathing is the first one, which is, we breathe in oxygen. We let go of carbon dioxide. Then there is external respiration, where it happens in the outside, where we get alveoli. What am I saying? Sorry. We get alveoli, where in the alveoli we exchange the oxygen and carbon dioxide, and then there's internal respiration. That's where we exchange those gases between our blood and the cells. And then there's cellular respiration, which is, what happens in mitochondria, produces ATP for energy. Interesting. Let's do a little bit of maybe let's do cell stuff. Let's do a little bit of cell stuff. Cell structure. Cell structure. So pretty much, cell structure. Yeah. What is cell structure? Yeah. It is what it is. What am I doing again? Focus, we're almost done. We could talk about chloroplasts. Chloroplasts, yay. This is where the majority of the energy is produced for plants. What am I doing? Okay, so yeah. We're going back to cells. We love cells. So this is where the main amount of energy is produced for plants. So what happens is, oh yeah, photosynthesis happens. Holy 8th grade nostalgia. Double membrane, bloody blah. Chlorophyll, bloody blah. That process, bloody blah. Cell wall, bloody blah. Okay. Just an introduction. So it's just like going over basic stuff. Let's go to cell structure. So, let's learn about cell structure. No, let's not learn about cell structure. I don't want to. Yeah, there's DNA stuff. I feel like the DNA stuff I didn't go over enough. Well, I'm just gonna read it in my head right now because I think I know it all. Let's see if I can answer, like, any questions. If I'm capable of it. We went over cytoskeleton. That was pretty much microfilaments, microtubules that just hold the cell structure. They also have these little transport things that, don't they just... Oh no, they anchor organelles, so they keep them in the specific spot for their function. Make sure they work as good as possible. As possible. Cilia. So those are those things. Yeah, they just help for locomotion. So they help move the cell. Flagella are like really big ones. They're like cilia, but big. And then they just also help move stuff. Adenosine triphosphate. What am I doing? Okay. Ribonucleic acid. What is ribonucleic acid? I do not know. I do know. Oh, no, this is just ribosomes. Okay. Lysosomes. Yeah, digest stuff. Basically like a liver, but for the cell specifically. Golgi apparatus does its thing. Cisphase, transphase. Cisphase is the receiving, transphase is the shipping. Okay, we got that. We got that. Whoa. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum. We talked about that a lot, right? Says interconnected flattened tubes. We know what that looks like. probably have a page on it, but I'm too lazy to go there. So it produces lipids. Also cells that, so cells that produce steroids as well are probably very abundant in smooth ER because they need to produce those steroids. Then my favorite word in all of biology, which is blebbing, it reminds me of when vesicles open to release neurotransmitters into the synaptic gap in neurons. Blebbing is when the small vesicles, it's also vesicles pretty much, that contain lipids, they pretty much just release them. They release off of the bleb. They bleb off of the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, which releases the stuff into wherever the nuts they go. Plasma membrane. Can we get into that? I kind of want to get into that. Hold on, I want to find a unit where we talk about it. Yeah, cell membranes. Cell membranes. Phospholipid bilayer is that keyword. Okay, we talk about permeable, but that's really straightforward. Diffusion okay. What is facilitated transport? That's when it is kind of like osmosis or diffusion, but they get a little bit of help from proteins. You don't need ATP, you just need a little bit of help from proteins. What else? What else? We got that. Okay, no, it doesn't really. Oh, you're right. Endocytosis. Large materials enter cell. Phagocytosis. Small pieces. Pinocytosis. Wait, no. Oh, hold on. Okay. Endocytosis is when large molecules pretty much enter. Then there's phagocytosis where really big stuff enters. Is ate by the cell. Then there's pinocytosis where really small things enter. Then there's what is it? Exocytosis, I think, where just stuff leaves the cell. Is that right? Boom. 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 Okay, I got it. Yeah. Very correct. Okay, now I think I'm just gonna edit a video, then I'm gonna be back and I'm gonna play Minecraft a little later. Yay!